Many times on the show, we've discussed what is going on in Sudan and why what's going on in Sudan is not just a genocide, but the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today. Maybe you can only compare it to what's going on in Gaza, because what's going on in Gaza is crazy. But for now, there's been a ceasefire. We thank God for that. So, but as we talk about this, we kind of forget that other than Sudan, there's another fire raging on in Africa, and it's in the DRC. And maybe because this has happened for a very long time, so it's somehow it has become monotonous, like we're now used to it. Well, this week, the situation in the DRC escalated. And it escalated to a place that a lot of people did not foresee. The rebel group M23 successfully took the town of Goma. Now, Goma, I believe, is in Eastern DRC. I think it's in Eastern DRC. Goma is a mining. Goma is rich in minerals. So it's like a mining hub for all kind of minerals you can think about. I think there's also an airport there, an important airport there. So the M23 rebels have taken control of the city of Goma, which has now made a lot of people, even like myself, look back again into what's going on in the DRC. Now, you've probably heard that M23 rebels are the bad guys. M23 rebels are supported by Kagame. Kagame is a dictator. Kagame is a bad person. That's not the conversation I want to have today. What I want to discuss, first of all, I want us to look at where this thing is coming from, right? And then I want to profess solutions. I want to profess solutions, what I think that we should be doing now. Because this thing going on in the DRC has every likelihood of escalating into something into a wider war. In case you may have not realized, in case you may have missed it, during this whole thing, I believe 15 South Africans, because there's a South African South African military contingent in the DRC. They are there to help keep the peace. I'm wondering, keep the peace. Is there really peace in the DRC, if we are being honest? But they say they are there to keep the peace. Okay. Now, when whole thing escalated, and when the M23 rebels were taking over the city of Goma, something that 15 South African troops were killed in this whole thing, and correctly enough, it upset the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. It upset him, and then he said some things about Kagame, and Kagame now said, that Rwanda, if it comes to it, Rwanda is ready to go into a military thing with South Africa. In fact, Rwanda is ready to go to war with South Africa. He had said that before, and even prior to, I think some months ago, he had even mentioned that he's ready to go to war with the DRC. So I said that for us to realize that this thing can escalate into a wider war in Africa that can bring in countries in East Africa and Southern Africa, because the DRC is not just part of the East Africa bloc, it's also part of the Southern Africa bloc, right? So that's why I said I want to profess some solutions that I think can come in handy now. But first, before I get into that, I want us to discuss this whole thing with the DRC. We know that the DRC was a creation of King Leopold, the genocidal maniac King Leopold. He's the one that cut the hands of the Congolese because people did not reach their rubber quota and things like that. So anyway, it was created by him, and he's also the mastermind behind the Berlin Conference of 1884, where Africa was chopped up and fake borders were created across Africa to serve European interests. He was the mastermind of that. So the DRC was created by him for his interests, and things got bad here and there because of the backlash to what he was wicked, the inhumane acts that was carried out in the DRC it moved from him under Belgian control, all of those things. But I don't want to get into that. I want to talk about this whole M23 rebels now. Now, this, based on these European borders that were, these fake European borders that were drawn across Africa, the Tutsis are an ethnic group, an indigenous group in Africa, around East Africa. Now, the Tutsis are in Rwanda. They were also the victims of the Rwanda genocide, where about 800,000 Tutsis, 800,000 to 1 million Tutsis were killed. Tutsis and moderate Tutsis were killed across Rwanda in 1994. So they were the victims. So the Tutsis are in Rwanda, but we also have some Tutsis in the DRC because of this line that was drawn across Africa by the Europeans. It's the same thing if you look in a country like Nigeria now. You see that there are Fulani people, Fulanis in Nigeria, there are Fulanis in Niger, there are Yoruba people in Nigeria, there are Yoruba people in Benin Republic, and on like that. So the Europeans did not even bother to come to look at the place, to at least cap them within their ethnicity, but that's not what I want to talk about. So this is how the Tutsis, we have Tutsis in Rwanda, we have Tutsis in the DRC. But somehow, these people, these Tutsis in the DRC, they felt like the government of the DRC was not furthering their interests. They were doing things to undermine them. All of those dissatisfaction, that's how the M23 group was created. Interestingly, which is very sad, imagine the government of the DRC, right? I'm not saying it's this particular government, but I'm just saying for a while, they keep saying, oh, you people are from Rwanda, go to Rwanda, because just imagine you telling your countrymen that they should go to another country, they're from another country. I mean, the people in Rwanda, the government of Rwanda is saying, no, these people are the DRC. It's just as if the government of Benin Republic is telling the Yoruba people in Benin Republic, go to Nigeria, you're Nigerians, you're not from Benin. That does not make any sense. Right? That does not make any sense. So I know that there are nuances to this, so it's complicated, right? But this is as basic and as easy as I can summarize the whole thing. But please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in certain things. So the government of the DRC has been telling this ethnic group to go to Rwanda, they're from Rwanda, blah, 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 and things have escalated like this. But now that we are here, and like I said, there's a high chance that this thing can escalate. What do we do? I know that there's been mediation attempts by Angola. The president of Angola has tried to mediate this thing. Even, I think sometime last year, I thought the mediations were making headway. I thought it was going somewhere, but apparently I was wrong. I also know we have the Nairobi process where Ruto's government has tried to mediate, and I give him credit for that. I give Angola credit for that. They've tried to mediate this whole thing, but to no avail. Several times I've heard that the leadership of the DRC and the leadership of Rwanda were going to meet. But I think even with the Angola process, the one that was mediated by the president of Angola, I think that it started off by discussion with the foreign ministers. Then from the foreign ministers, the idea was for it to escalate and reach President Felix Tshisekedi, and I hope I pronounced his name properly, please. If I did it, please, I'm sorry. And President Paul Kagame. So Tshisekedi of the DRC and Paul Kagame of Rwanda, it was starting with the foreign ministers and it was going to conclude with the leadership. But then everything kept falling apart. I understand that, I'm guessing that the president of DRC is upset because he feels like Kagame of Rwanda, because Kagame of Rwanda is supporting these M23 rebels in the DRC, which is why these rebel groups have been able to, this rebel group has been able to continue for as long as it has continued. Because if it wasn't getting funding and support from the government of Rwanda, it's not going to have come this far. So I get that he's upset, that the leadership of the DRC is upset, right? But you don't use emotions to do politics. On many occasions, you need to be able to remove your emotions to make a good decision, not just for your country, but for the wider region. So no matter how much Tshisekedi of the DRC is upset, he has been upset for a very long time. And his anger all along has not resolved the issue facing his country. Okay, now that he has lost the city of Goma, although I read somewhere that this is not the first time that Goma is fallen, that Goma has fallen before. So I read that somewhere, right? But this, now that Goma is not within his control, is his country any better off? I'm saying this because one of the reasons why this whole thing has stalled like this is because the leadership of the DRC is upset. In fact, as soon as the city of Goma was taken, I saw reports. No, there were several reports that said, okay, that the two leaders, that is Kagame and Tshisekedi, they've agreed to have a conversation. And I'm like, good. Can we just have this conversation and move on with this thing? Because until the leadership is talking, there is no resolution. All right? Then I saw that before like a few hours, before I could even discuss that with someone, within a few hours, the leadership of the DRC had pulled out and said, no, they're not having any talks. You cannot do things like this. You can't use emotions to do politics. Do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the situation in Syria. Before, yes, between Assad and Erdogan. Erdogan must have upset Assad because Erdogan and Assad were friends. I think their family members, they vacationed together on several occasions. But when the United States under Obama moved against Assad, Erdogan supported the move against Assad and called for the overthrow of the Assad government. So it upset Assad personally because he assumed, this is me just making my assumptions, he probably thought that he and Erdogan are friends, so he didn't expect that from Erdogan, right? So, but I know that sometime from that 2022, even before 2022, but when I started following the situation closely, from that 2022, on several occasions, Erdogan had asked to have a dialogue with Assad. Even when Syria was welcomed back into the Arab League, right? Erdogan had asked several occasions to have a conversation, let them talk, because even if Assad was upset at Erdogan, and rightly so, there were still things that the two countries, that's Syria and Turkey, they needed to discuss. They had interest, they needed to hash out. But Assad kept refusing. In 2023, Erdogan kept asking, let us have discussions. And even the Russians had even asked Assad to come in. Russia was going to mediate the talks. And Assad kept refusing. Then we saw what happened in 2024. Towards the end of the year, the Assad government fell. Look at the state of Syria today. Head-chopping jihadists. Al-Qaeda, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, is in charge in Syria. Is it better for Syria, this situation? Now the Christians in Syria are not safe. Other people are not safe. We are seeing terrible pictures, terrible videos coming out of Syria. Of former people who were within the government. I saw one man was tied to the tree, they stoned him to death. Gruesome images like that. And I'm asking, the situation in Syria today, is it any better? Only if Assad had spoken with Erdogan. Now, I'm not saying they would have, it's like going to work like magic. You sit down and everything is just perfect. No. That's not the way it works. Right? But as you begin to have talks, there's more likelihood of bringing a solution to the issue when you have talks than when you say, no, I'm not talking to you. I mentioned the situation of Erdogan and Assad because I am getting the same vibe between Tshisekedi and Kagame. Kagame has upset you. Okay, let's take that. You're very angry, right? But the more you keep ignoring, things can get out of hand. And get out of hand to the extent that it will not now work in the interest of you, that is the president of of the DRC, Tshisekedi, it won't work in his interest. Neither will it work in the interest of the DRC or the interest of the region. So the most important thing which is why I'm talking about what I think is the solution. Instead of pointing fingers, we've pointed fingers, Kagame bad, okay, Tshisekedi bad, incompetent leader, Kagame dictator, blah, blah, blah. All those things, we've done it how many years now? It's not resolving anything. Even before these two on the scene, there were other people who were still pointing fingers. Do you understand? So it's not resolving anything. The most important thing we should do now is dialogue. Because if you look through history, at the end of the day, after they use all their bombs, they use all their missiles, they use all their drones and all their guns and everything they have. After you use all those things, even if you look at World War II, where the United States used nuclear weapons, after all of those things, the situation still came from where? Dialogue. You will still talk. The only way to resolve conflict is to engage in. That's what diplomacy is. Diplomacy is dialogue. Diplomacy is dialogue. So what am I suggesting? That African nations, including Rwanda and the DRC, we need to get sophisticated with diplomacy. We need to talk. You cannot say because he annoyed me, therefore I'm not going to talk to him, and you scatter everything. It does not benefit you. It does not benefit your country. It does not benefit the region. It does not benefit Africa. All right, now see those people who died. Those civilians who have died for nothing, like for something that could have just. I'm not saying the first time you sit down to talk is the first time, is going to be the time everything is resolved. No, but the more that you talk and you say, okay, we'll discuss about this next time, the more you keep talking and talking and talking, the more likely it is that you arrive at a solution. All right, we're talking about the DRC. So I was watching a video of Piano Lumumba, and he said something that caught my attention. He said, as we are discussing the DRC, the M23 rebels, but let's not forget that many researchers have produced research showing that there are over 100 rebel groups in the DRC. There are over 100 in the DRC. M23 is just one. And many of these rebel groups, they have become militant for mining companies. So mining companies will get them, right, to cause chaos. So as the chaos is going on, they can be mining and be taking all the wealth of the DRC. So if you say you are mad at Kagame because of the M23 rebels, okay, so therefore we want to go to war because of the M23 rebels. Minus the M23 rebels, we have over 100 and something others. What are we going to do to fix that? What are we going to do to fix that? So fixing the situation in the DRC is of utmost importance, and the way to fix it is diplomacy. The way to do it is diplomacy. We need to talk. We need sophisticated diplomats in Africa. Because if we had such a level of sophistication within the East Africa bloc, within the Southern Africa bloc, even in the African Union, I don't think there's I reserve my comments. I wanted to say something about the African Union, but I reserve my comments. Even within the African Union, if we had sophisticated diplomats, many of the nonsenses we see across the continent, okay, now that we're talking about DRC, Rwanda, many of these things we are seeing, we're not going to be seeing them. How can a leader? It reminds me of Biden and co. Oh, we're not going to talk to Putin because Putin is a dictator. Okay. You're sending all your bombs and all your weapons and you're just killing Ukrainians. Killing, you're wasting, now that you did this thing, the Russians have been able to have an access into American military technology. Now that you've done this thing, at first, the Russians did not have access to the Patriot missiles. Now they have seen Patriot missiles for what it really is. They've seen it. They've seen everything. Because, we're not going to talk to dictator Putin. I remember when, what's his name? This Viktor Orban of Hungary. When Hungary assumed leadership of the EU and Viktor Orban went to talk to Putin, they almost ripped him apart in the EU. Like, why are you talking to Putin? What is wrong with you people? Diplomacy is, that's why you're a diplomat. Diplomacy is conversation. It's talks. It's talks. All right, now, after everything they did, Russia has won in Ukraine. Russia won. I think that's one of the reasons that Trump will probably look at it and just remove his face. Because it was a disaster. It was not need. All they had to do was to understand that Russia had its own security interests. Right? Russia had its own security interests. That was what they had to understand. And discuss it. And clear the air. But no, we don't discuss with dictators. We are seeing this is the same thing that we are seeing right now in Africa. No, we can't talk to Kagame. Kagame is a dictator. Okay. Where has that left you? You have lost your city of Goma. You've lost Goma. Where has that left you? That has allowed the breathing ground for more rebels in your country, destabilizing your country. Where has that left you? What did you gain? So instead of pulling out of talks, I understand that he's upset. I may not get it, but I do understand that the Tshisekedi of the DRC is upset. But anger does not solve anything. So I'm suggesting, let us have dialogues, even within these blocks of East Africa, Southern Africa, and even the African Union. Let us insist. Because until Tshisekedi has pressure, he may not come to the negotiating table. Until Kagame gets pressure, he may not come to, although I've not heard Kagame say he does not want negotiations, but he may not come to the negotiating table. So we need to insist within ourselves that each of these leaders, the African Union should put pressure. It's not just saying, oh, we condemn the M23 rebel. We've been condemning them since. Like, they say insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. Then Ruto went to call Macron. What is Ruto calling Macron for? What is Macron's business in what is going on in East Africa, in between Congo, DRC and Rwanda? What is the business of France? Right? As if no, Africa, we cannot get and resolve our situation, our issues within ourselves. So we have to put pressure. All this, we condemn M23 rebels. We ask them to leave the Goma. All those things are empty words. Nobody's going to answer you. You have been doing it since you did not fix anything. So the solution to what is going on in the DRC, at least the first step to a just and lasting peace in the DRC, is for talks. When we start talk, we talk today, we'll talk tomorrow, we'll talk the day after, we'll talk and talk. And I mean between the leadership, the highest level of leadership. That's how we get to a resolution. So let me know what you think about this whole chaos in the DRC. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everyone around you so that we can amplify Africa's voice in the global conversation. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. And finally, we have started our African media movement, Ukweli. If you want to join us to become a part of pushing the African narrative in a multipolar world, to enlighten Africa on their diplomatic, on their geopolitical, on their economic interest in a multipolar world, join Ukweli African Media Movement with the link in the description and also on the screen. Thank you so much.